we're diving into a really powerful idea from Dr. Britton's work in Psychology Today. It's this thought that long before a crime ever happens, something else, something much quieter, takes place first. It's this gradual, almost invisible loss of self. So how does that even happen? Let's get into it. And this quote, man, it just gets right to the heart of the whole thing. It's talking about a guy named Carlos who's just come back to his home, San Andres Island, after being away for years. He's physically there, right? He's standing on the soil where he was born. But emotionally, he's just adrift. That feeling of being no longer fully present, that's everything. That is the key to this whole idea of losing yourself. Okay, so let's start with Carlos's story. We're calling this section A Stranger at Home. And that's exactly what he was. After years locked up in Tampa, he's finally back on his home island. You'd think this would be a moment of pure relief, right? But it was anything but. I mean, can you even imagine that? The freedom you've been dreaming of for years finally arrives, but it doesn't feel like freedom at all. It just feels confusing. Everything that should feel like home, the sounds, the faces, the very ocean that shaped who you are, it's all right there in front of you, but the connection, it's just gone. It's like he became a tourist in his own life. And this didn't happen overnight. It wasn't some sudden break. This really shows how over all those years in another country, just adapting to a new culture, his identity was slowly, quietly reshaped. The way he talked, the way he connected with people, even how he saw himself in the mirror, it all shifted little by little, piece by piece, until the man who returned home was, in a very real way, a different person. All right, so let's move on, because here's the thing. It wasn't just Carlos who had changed. The island he came back to, it wasn't the same one he'd left behind. So his own internal feeling of being lost was basically mirrored by this huge transformation on the outside. And you can really see the difference here. It's a stark contrast. On one hand, you have the San Andres he grew up with, a place with its own cultural rhythm, a shared Creole language, this deep connection between generations. But on the other side, you see what it became. Overpopulation, huge economic changes, and what that led to was a kind of cultural erosion. The old traditions started to fade, the language wasn't spoken as much, and the very things that once gave him his grounding, well, they were fighting just to survive. And this quote, this is from Carlos himself, and it just says everything, doesn't it? He said he could walk through the island and recognize all the places, but still feel this quiet distance. It's like the connection between place and self had loosened. That's such a powerful way to put it. That vital tether that ties you to your place in the world had frayed, and it left him just floating, in a place that looked familiar but felt completely foreign. So this brings us to a really crucial point. How does an identity even begin to fade like that? It's not like flipping a switch, right? It's a slow, quiet process that can start super early in life. And a lot of the time, it goes completely unnoticed. And we can see that whole progression so clearly right here. For Carlos, you can trace it back. It started with just a feeling of disconnection when he was in school. Then, his native language started to get weaker. Of course, years in prison just massively sped up that feeling of being cut off. And then, the final step, coming home. That's when the full weight of that slow motion loss of self really hit him.
And look, this isn't just some one-off story about one guy. There's real science here. Research in what's called developmental criminology completely backs us up. Our identity is basically the cornerstone of our behavior. And when our early environments, our schools, our communities, don't recognize or validate who we are, that foundation starts to crack. And those cracks can lead to some serious consequences way later in life. Which leads us to the big question. What do we do about it? If a fractured identity is really at the root of the problem, what's the solution? This is where Dr. Britton's work is so interesting, because it offers a whole new framework for understanding the path back to healing.
I mean, that's a huge question, isn't it? How do you rebuild a self that has come undone? If the very core of who you are feels miles away, totally out of reach, where in the world do you even start to put those pieces back together? Well, the answer, according to Dr. Britton, lies in something called identity restoration theory. The core idea is actually pretty simple, but it's also really profound. It says that true reintegration into society isn't just about getting a job or finding a place to live. It's about actively, purposefully reclaiming the cultural identity that was lost along the way. And that completely reframes the conversation. We stop talking about just punishing an act and start talking about healing a person. And this is where the theory gets super practical. It's built on these 5 pillars. First, you've got memory, which is all about reconnecting with your cultural past. Then there's place, reestablishing that deep emotional grounding. Third is narrative, rebuilding a personal story that makes sense. Fourth, belonging, which is about fostering that deep sense of community and connection. And finally, agency, which means regaining a sense of control and purpose in your own life. You put those all together, and you've got a roadmap for rebuilding a self. Okay, last section here, because the implications of this go way, way beyond just one person's life. This isn't just about Carlos, or even just about people who've been incarcerated. This is about something universal. Because Carlos's experience, it's not unique. Not at all. This quiet disconnection, this loss of self, is happening all over the world. You see it in communities dealing with migration, in societies where rapid change is washing away tradition, and you even see it in classrooms where kids just don't see their own reality reflected back at them. This theory, it gives us a whole new lens to understand some of the biggest social challenges we're facing today. So, we end with this. If we accept this idea, that the story of a crime doesn't actually start with the act itself, but way before that, with the quiet fading of a person's identity, well, that changes everything, doesn't it? It forces us to ask a much, much deeper question, not just about our justice system, but about our communities and about ourselves. Where does healing truly begin?